Main Hustle Media podcasts are recorded on the ancestral lands of the Chumash, Tongva, Karanva, and Hohokam people, and I wish to pay my respects to the people of those nations, both past and present.
Hey, y'all.
Hi, fancy seeing you guys for the first time.
Welcome to the Queer and Far podcast, a travel podcast from a couple of queer femmes, providing tips and resources for traveling safely while Black, brown, queer, disabled, or from any marginalized group and intersections in between. I am the failed host, Charmaine Fury, who just let us talk for 25 minutes without recording. I am joined by my co-host, Shane,
who is still a noob and still high on painkillers with a kidney stone. Hi.
Yeah, that's fun. And our guest today is the dopest and most patient.
Yes.
Couple things. First of all, I love that theme song. So I was like, we get to hear it again. I was excited about that.
Yeah.
And then secondly, I just feel bad for the people who didn't get to hear that whole 25 minutes of conversation.
It was good.
I know. It was
really
good.
I have never done that before. In 4+ years, I have never done that before.
Well, we would like to thank you for popping your cherry with us.
Damn. I was like, I looked over, you were like in the mix, like you were hitting really good information because we were getting into a meaty part. And then I looked over, I was like, why is that record button blue when it's supposed to be red? I'm so sorry. All right, so
But I mean, hooray for color coding. I mean, you never would have noticed.
I know.
It's like,
She would have gone to edit.
show
Like,
me on the color wheel where I was like, oh my god. Okay, so today we are talking about living and working in Korea, and then just because we're brown while Black, well, me and Jay are brown, but you know. Everybody can see it. You can see it. You know what we're talking about. So we're talking about that, and this being one of the first episodes that we've had a guest that's actually done the living abroad thing. Shay and I have been talking about moving abroad for a while. We're within 40 days of that move at the time that we are recording this, but now we're going to talk to someone who has actually done it by living and working in Korea. Jay, why don't you introduce yourself to the audience a little bit? Tell us about your show, tell us about your work, and then we'll get into it.
Yeah. So my name is Javann Jones. I'm a comedian and a podcaster. I podcast currently on Frown Town. We're on a bit of a hiatus right now, so we're kind of working out some format changes. But long story short, we're a podcast about laws and the government and the world around us and how we can improve it. Some of the, just I guess full disclosure, some of the format changes is I don't know if I believe we can change the world anymore. Question mark.
Fucking saying.
All right,
like, bro,
we'll come over. We'll sit.
Yeah.
It's while we're leaving. It's like why we're ready to leave.
I don't know if we can actually make any changes anymore. Question mark. Yeah. So format may. Yeah, the new format might just be like, we fucking hate this. And so I lived overseas in Korea for 3 years. I moved to Korea in 2012, and I was there until 2015. I was introduced to Korea by my friend. I had a friend who was Black and Korean. His mom and dad separated, and his mom went to Korea. When he finished college, he moved to Korea as well. He had a job here, and then went to go be an English teacher in Korea just so he could spend more time with his mom.
Okay.
He got there, met a girl, fell in love with her, and they were getting married. And so he invited me to come see him get married because he was my best friend, and we had this whole pact that if one of us gets married, the other person's going to be there. At the time, it was we're best man, but apparently there's no best men in Korean weddings, I found out. There was not a wedding party. It's just a super dope celebration, which, by the way, if you've never seen a Korean wedding, go see a Korean wedding. It is.
Okay.
Mwah, so
I think
good.
The best man, best woman thing is American because
I think it is.
My best friend was Arabic. We didn't do it there. Japanese, we don't do it there. In Britain, it's not common there either. So
I think it might just be an American thing.
Yeah.
His wedding was super amazing. There was a spiral staircase. There were chandeliers. There were multiple clothing changes. I mean, the production value alone is worth it.
Listen, some stereotypes are stereotypes for a reason, and East Asians fucking turn up.
Production. It's. I mean,
Okay.
It's an attention to detail that I was shocked by. I was like, oh my God, how many clothing changes are you going to make?
Costume changes, photographers,
Both of
engagement
them.
Cosmic
photos.
changes. Oh my
Not
God.
just the bride, by the way, bride
Yeah.
and groom, multiple
Yeah.
costumes, which is like going in and out. There was like a humbug, and then there was like, it was wild.
Yep.
It was wild. I 100% recommend going to go see a Korean wedding if you get the chance. I've seen 3. Not disappointed by any of them. They were all fantastic.
10 out of 10. Will
10 out of 10,
recommend.
will recommend.
Get yourself a best friend that's Korean so that you have the offstanding chance.
Yeah,
You'll
you just
end up.
you gotta just get yourself invited to a Korean wedding. Like, you gotta do it. That should be a highlight for you. So I was there, and while I was there, I stayed in Seoul. He actually got a friend let me like stay in his apartment for a week, so I got to like just kind of live in Seoul for a week. I can't remember which district it is, but I honestly ended up just kind of being like, "Yo, I think I want to live here."
Hell
I
yeah.
went back to America. At the time, I was in college and was kind of finishing up. And then I finished, and my friend kind of hit me up and was like, "Hey, you should move to Korea." And I was like, "I don't know." So I decided what I was going to do. I was like, I'll let fate roll the dice for me. So I'll apply for jobs in Korea. I'll apply for jobs in America, and fate will decide my hand. I do this every time, by the way. It's how I ended up in Seattle. I honestly was just
You
applying
know
for
what?
jobs
That was going to
everywhere.
be another question, but okay.
That is how I ended up in Seattle. Like that is my when I don't want to make a decision, I'm like fate, and then I just apply for a bunch of stuff, and then I take the first thing that comes. That way I don't have to think about it. So I did that, and I applied for a job basically with Cheongdam in Korea, and they got back to me the next day. So I applied like on a Tuesday, and then on Wednesday they were like calling me like, "Hey, are you serious about coming to Korea?" And I was like, "Yeah, I guess so. I guess I am." A week later, I was like in Atlanta getting like my FBI background check, and then 2 weeks later, just in Korea.
As a Japanese mixed person who applied to the JET program several times from the ages of like 18 to 24, I'm fully offended that I never got accepted. I think partially because I have Japanese heritage, and they're like, we want blonde hair, blue eyed, or people who don't look like us teaching English.
Yeah.
Okay. So you're just one day, let's see what happens, and 2 weeks later, you're just
in Korea.
in Korea.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sorry. I wish they had been as streamlined for you as well.
Maybe I should have gone to Korea instead of Japan, but then I would have been disowned.
I will say this.
Different problem.
So actually teaching in Korea, I think the weirdest thing about this was so they actually have you do like a English test because they want to hear if you have an accent. So if you have a Southern accent, for example, which I do, I have a Southern accent. You need to be able to hide it. So if you and that also is something like I found out that Koreans value specific accents over others. So the most valuable accent in Korean culture, again, I see that face, Shay. The most valuable accent in Korean culture is British, which is weird because like that's
fair,
like,
yeah.
Yeah, it's very weird. And then Australian is really sought after. Then nondescript American, and then everything else just don't have. So like I had to do like a voice test. Fortunately, like I can sort of hide my accent. It's just certain words that trip me up, but for the most part, like I don't sound very Southern, thankfully. And then I was overseas teaching. Fun stuff I learned on my first day. Korean apartments use radiant heating. Never experienced that before. Didn't know what it was, so I froze. Like I literally almost froze to death. I got there in February.
Oh, because you didn't know how to eat.
Oh,
I didn't know how to use it.
Yeah.
I got there in February, and so like the heat was on when I got there, and so I was getting ready to leave, and no one told me it was radiant heating. So I'm like, oh well, I'm leaving my apartment. Let me turn the heat off.
Nope.
Like I don't need to run the heat while I'm here. So I turned it off,
Hilarious.
and then I went back out, and then I came in, and I was like, oh, it's cold. Let me turn the heat on, and I was like, I can't. Like, where's the blower? There's no blower.
There's no blower.
And then
You're gonna have to wait that shit out.
Yeah, and so I ended up having to put on like a hoodie, a jacket, a pair of pants, 2 or 3 pairs of socks, and like a blanket, and just laid in my apartment for the entire night. Like, oh my god, I'm so cold. I actually sent a picture of my thermostat to my friend who was in Korea. I was like, hey,
What do I do?
Can you tell me how to use this? I don't know what I'm doing. And then finally, like the next day, like the sun came out and it warmed up, and I figured it out. Which, by the way, radiant heating is amazing. I love it.
It's
now.
amazing when you know how to use it.
When you know how to use it, yeah.
It's the best now, but at the time I was like, this is stupid. I don't like this. I don't like this at all.
I also like it for like when your dryer breaks down and you just throw it on top of the radiators so that
Well, so the floor was the heat. So like it was actually coming out of the floor. The entire the best part about it was like if you because the hot water heater got like was a turn like you had to turn your hot water heater on, and it was all embedded in your floor. So if you turned your hot water heater on, it would like your floor would get scalding hot, and there'd be times it's really great, but there'd be times where like you leave your hot water heater on and like leave your apartment, and when you come back, your floor is just lava.
You can't walk.
Right.
It's just like I can't walk on my floor.
I think I might like lava feet though. I don't know.
Lava
It is
feet
really
sounds
nice.
good. Yeah. I enjoy it underfloor heating also, and I think Koreans are probably the people who did this, but Japan did a version of this in like old homes where they were built at certain angles so that you could light a fire outside your house, but it would funnel it up underground underneath. To keep your houses warm and shit like that. And that's something like to this day I'm like, man, if I ever go off grid living, like I full on want to build like that's what I want to do. I want to light a fire like 100 feet away from my house, but that it pushes all that heat under my floor. That's dope.
It was a good time though. I think the thing that I would tell you is something if you're considering going to Korea, try to get like a larger school. So the school I actually worked for was called Cheongdam. Cheongdam was I think it's the largest or one of the largest English schools in Korea. It's traded on the Korean Stock Exchange, so it's really large. And there's benefits I think to having a really large school at your back, but it still kind of doesn't matter. It really is kind of down to where you're working and who you work for. So I had a friend who also worked for Cheongdam, who got put in a different area. So I was in Daejeon. It's right in the middle of the country. I want to say it's like the 5th largest city, like 2 million people. So it's a city, right? And I was like I was like a neighborhood away from downtown. So here's the downtown, and then here's my neighborhood. So I'm like a neighborhood away from downtown, just popping all the time. There's like stuff happening outside my window. It felt very much like, oh, I live in a city. And I love that. I was actually really into it. My friend got put in a rural area. He's also black. I can't remember the name of the city he got put into, quite frankly, but it was so rural that he had to get to Seoul, he had to take like a bus to another city to hop a train to then get to Seoul. And the buses only ran up until like maybe 9 o'clock. So if he was in Seoul and it was like 8 o'clock, he could not get back home. He just had to stay in Seoul till the next day.
Damn.
And he was black. So like one of the things that you end up doing as a black person is you go to Seoul a lot because that's where you can find like your hair products if you use them if you're black. That's the only place I could find a actual barber who could cut my hair. It was a black dude who his wife was in the military and he was just overseas with her. And so he was just running. I don't know if it was like a legal barber shop. I don't know if it was or not, but he did a great fade. So, I mean... He was pretty fantastic, but that was the only place I could find to get a haircut. So like you spent a lot of time in Seoul in general if you are black, just because that's the only place. Really, if you're American, because that's the only place you can find a lot of kind of American amenities. So like I would tell you, just really pay attention to where you are and then who you work for, because even with a larger school, some larger schools are not great, and smaller schools. There's a story, I guess full transparency, I told this previously and we're all shocked. So the shock is not going to be here. But there was a smaller school, like smaller schools. Yeah. Stuff that you need to know about smaller schools. I had a friend while I was overseas who worked for a very, very small school. He had like maybe 20 students. And one day he went to work and the building was there, but the school was not. The sign was down. There were no kids.
So like he worked there the day before.
Yes. Well, it was Monday, so it was like the weekend before.
So Friday he clocks out, he walks home.
Done with all his work. He's like, yeah, weekend. And then Monday he comes back in and no school, nothing.
And nobody called, like you can't drop a...
No one told him. And then the wild part is, so your school provides your housing, right? So if you have a place, your school provides your housing. So when he went back to his place, there was a real estate agent like showing his apartment to other people who were going to rent it because he had to get out in like a week. He ended up like staying with me in my studio apartment, which was not great, for about a week until he found something else. But it left him in a place where he essentially was just illegal because he didn't have a job.
Yeah.
And it leaves you in a kind of a bad place. So you kind of have to be aware of that.
Did he get paid? Or did they just roast him?
Did he at least get his last check?
No.
That's what I'm...
No, God. He had to... So and that's another thing. He had to take them to, I guess, the equivalent of civil court.
Yeah.
In Korea. And so like he worked out for him a little bit because he had a girlfriend who was Korean.
Excellent.
And because his girlfriend was Korean, she understood how the system worked. She understood like what needs to be done, and she could speak Korean. So he was able to kind of get things taken care of because he did not speak any Korean. They ended up getting married. They're still in Korea, which by the way, it's super dope.
Okay.
They have a kid. It's amazing. But like at the time, he was just like, "Yo, I think if he had not had the Korean girlfriend, I think he would have just been completely out of luck." Yeah. I don't know how you negotiate because the Korean legal system, I don't understand it. Like,
I mean, to be fair, we barely understand our own.
American, right?
But
you don't understand how it works. You don't know what your recourse is, and then you can look stuff up to try to figure things out. But there's just like a lot of people being like, "Yep, it happened. Too bad," and so you kind of end up kind of ass out. Yeah.
Goodness gracious. Like I got so stuck on that when the first run of this discussion, like the fact like that the apartment building got the contact. The apartment building was like, "Oh, he went to work, but there's no work. Go show that apartment right now."
Throw his
like,
shit out. Yeah.
That shit rocks my brain.
So he was able to at least get some of his money or what? Like
I think he got some of the money back, but I mean like I think the problem was the school ran out of money. So like one of the red flags if you're looking for a job in Korea is like if you look at how much one of the bigger public schools pay and look at how much one of the private schools pay, if the private school is paying like a whole bunch more, you should really be asking yourself where that money comes from.
Why they do that.
Yeah, why they do it. Because they're just trying to get you there to...
Yeah.
It's probably a long con, yeah.
So this actually does make me think of like you mentioned that the company you worked for, they flew you out, they got you there. If you end, do they fly you back or is that your responsibility?
Oh yeah, they covered my ticket back too.
Oh, okay. But in this private school case, obviously he didn't get his last check, so they weren't planning on helping him get back home.
And they owed him money, by the way. So like, and like when I talked to him about this, he was like, "Yeah, they still owe me they were supposed to pay for his flight back home. They were supposed to pay for his flight." Here, like to Korea, they didn't pay for any of that. They just kind of gave him a salary. It's like, "Oh yeah, we're gonna pay you," and then they never did. And then, like I said, 3 months or so into the job, they were just like, gone.
Dude, thank God he knew you because, like, I could just think about that. I would shit myself. Like, I'm in a country that's not mine. You know, I'm still learning the language. I don't know how legal stuff works, and I am now homeless and jobless.
Yeah.
That's
shit
so
myself.
Terrifying. Yeah, like that would stress me out. I mean, it's like the secondhand discomfort that I experienced from hearing the story. The first time I was just like, I couldn't even get to my next question at first because it's just that you could just be stranded in a country where your primary language and their primary language is different is scary enough. But if you also have like the legality of you are now technically illegally there. Because it's not like when you're in country, you can suddenly be like, I'm on holiday now, you know, like you were here for a job and now you weren't. So that's fucking freaky. Dude. Okay, back to like your experience of it. You said that because of the company you worked for, they provided a lot of amenities. They took care of your housing. So I guess that is also. I mean, it's a benefit because now you don't have to figure out how to maneuver and find a place in another country. But the flip side of that is also that, like, you are beholden to. Yeah,
you need to be good at your job. So, like if you and for people who are looking again, if you're like going to go, I would tell you should be good at teaching. If you have some teaching experience, that's super useful. I had some. I wasn't a teacher here in the States, but I had some teaching experience. Just because it was something I had thought about and I explored. And so I had done a couple classes in teaching and I tried teaching a couple classes. Actually, I taught like classes in high school because I thought that might be what I wanted to do in college. I didn't. I decided not to be a teacher, by the way. Sorry, America. Not going to do it. And I know, and I say this fully knowing they're like, "Oh, we need more black men as teachers." I'm like, "No, we don't, because you're not going to pay us enough. We're just not going to do it. Not going to pay us enough. I'm just not going to do it."
Or throw you in jail for reading books.
Yeah. Oh, my sister was a teacher. I say was. My sister was a teacher in Alabama. She was an art teacher. She quit because she got tired of having to constantly go out and spend all of her checks on supplies for her kids to be able to have art supplies. And it was just, she just finally was like, I feel like I am going broke. They don't pay me enough, but I'm spending all of my extra money on art supplies. And I would try to help her when I could, but I mean, it's just one of those things where like it's just not a supported system. And I think having lived overseas and taught overseas, there's a difference in how teaching is viewed overseas. I think it's
higher valued.
Yeah, I think especially like, and we talked about this a little bit, like especially from the standpoint of like English, because learning English is such a prestigious thing.
Yep.
Because it has so much prestige, the person who teaches you it has a little bit like you're classed above a little bit because it's like, well, you know English. And I think it's one of those things that like it's like you're more supported in the fact like this is something that I know is just starting to happen with like tablets in classrooms now in 2020. I had a tablet in 2013 in my classroom. All of my kids had tablets. Like we all had Samsung tablets, and it was like the entire class was just on tablets. And it was just because they were like, look, this is a better way to learn. We are going to spend the money on it. And they installed like just an entirely new system, like almost overnight, I feel, just because they thought that was going to be more effective. And I think that's something that it took a pandemic to force us to do that.
Yeah.
So, yeah. It's
and I'm sure
great.
that once they tried to get everybody back in schools, they were like, can we sell all these tablets?
Yeah. We don't need these tablets anymore.
You know? Yeah.
And in all honesty, I think that is that. But yeah, when you work for a bigger school, so I worked for a bigger school. When I first got there, I talked about how I can't remember when I talked about the radiant heat. Was that during recording?
You did that on this one.
On this one.
Yeah.
Cool. So part of a thing I found out, because there's things that you find out, like going to the store, going to the bank, trying to set up a bank account is just difficult. Sometimes you go to a bank and there's a person who speaks English and you're like, awesome. And then sometimes you go to the bank, no one speaks English, and you're like, not as awesome. So what ended up happening is our school had a dude. His name was Dubom. He was super cool. And you could just ask him to do stuff for you, almost like a valet, where you just be like, hey, I need a bank account. And he'd be like, all right, give me your ARC, your alien resident card. He would go off. He'd come back. Here's a bank book. Here's your account. You're set.
So you didn't even need to be with him.
Yeah, I know. You didn't have to be in the same. He would just go do it and then come back. Like, that's how my bank account got set up. I was like, hey, I need a bank account. He was like, okay, give me your ARC. And he was like, I need X amount of money to put into it. It's like, here you go. And he was like, all right. And he left, came back, hand me a bank book. You can see the money's in there. He's like, this is your account. And then if you wanted to pull the money out, you just take the bank book in, hand it to him, and your money's there. So, yeah, it was great.
Okay.
He got my TV for me. Because I was just like, hey, Dubom, can you grab a TV? He's like, yeah. What kind of TV you want? How big do you want it to be?
How
He's
big
like,
do you
all
want
right.
it?
Yeah. He's like, all right.
And he would
he's
just
like,
bring it to you.
He'd be like, how much do you want to spend? Yeah. And he'd be like, hey, I got a TV for you. It's going to be X amount.
He'd show up, you hand him money, he goes out, does what he got to do, come back, and you just have stuff now.
Yeah. Yeah, it was very cushy. I'm not saying that it wasn't great.
So this is kind of where we were when when I realized my big failing. The meaty part of this discussion about moving abroad is that, I mean, you and I are brown folks, so we have a different relationship to service, because of the people we're related to and our skin color and all that kind of stuff. So one of my big concerns about moving abroad, and especially because I'm going to a brown country, is participating in the culture versus exploiting the culture. Wanting to be very actively attentive to how I move in a space that is predominantly brown folks, predominantly poorer than me. You know, like here, I barely got money to put myself together. There, I will have a lot more money, and it'll probably raise my class standing, I guess, in terms of the resources that I have. So participating in the culture where it's not uncommon that someone in the middle class would have a cook, a maid, or somebody, a driver, or something like that, and wanting to participate in the culture as the culture is without exploiting it, but also like when to know that it's okay to say, yes, I want to participate in this way, or not participate it, and things like that. So you're living in Korea as not just an American, but a Black American. So there's different things that are happening to you probably than your non-Black counterparts. But you still have, like, you got this guy that you could just
this dude. Yeah. I'll say this. I was really cognizant of not abusing Do-Bomb. So
Right.
an example, there was someone who, because Do-Bomb also had the keys to your apartment as well. So your apartments, the apartments that we lived in were keypads. So you just keypad and it would unlock. They were keyed as well. If your keypad died, you could, get a key. He had the keys. So if you got locked out of your apartment, you kind of had to call him. There was one specific, I think it was like Christmas, where another girl got locked out of her apartment. And this girl, by the way, for context, this girl was black. So like, I want to throw that context in. She got locked out of her apartment on Christmas. And here's the thing you should know about getting locked out of your apartment. So like the batteries in your keypad are on the inside of the door. And when your keypad is almost about to die, it beeps annoyingly. Like you have to ignore it for a while. It's like beep, beep, beep. And it's like, yo, change the
But
batteries
as black
out.
folks, we have training in
She
ignoring
just
the
ignored
beep.
it. She just ignored it. On Christmas, she gets locked out. It's like her batteries die.
No.
She gets locked out, and she calls Do-Bomb on Christmas to come unlock her. He was at Jeju Island with his family. He had to leave Jeju Island, drive
Island.
Yeah, which is like a destination spot. It's like a tourist destination spot. So you have to leave Jeju Island and then drive. Jeju Island, I think, is like right around Busan. So I would imagine you have to drive like maybe an hour and a half. It's back to Daejeon to come open her apartment. And he was not happy about it. It was he's like with his family during Christmas.
Yeah.
Like, I'm looking at my mom and dad. We're like, Christmas, it's a great time. Let's open gifts. What's that? I got to go open an apartment. All right. And then so I tried to avoid doing that.
Night. Like,
yeah. Like maybe
can't.
stay with somebody else.
Yeah.
I just tried to avoid like abusing him to that point. Like
Sure.
there were also other people who like had him come change out like light bulbs or like like stuff that you can do. So I think the key here is there are things that I like going to get a bank account I can't do. I don't speak enough Korean to do it. So I was comfortable having him go do it. Going to go get a TV. I technically could go do it, but quite frankly, I didn't want a new one, and I was like, I don't know anyone and how to get a used one. I can't get. Yeah. Is there a Craigslist here? I couldn't read it if there was one.
Right.
So I felt comfortable asking him for that. But it was basically if there are things that I can't do, I'm comfortable asking because that's what he gets paid to do. But to your point, there's a point where you cross the line of like, okay, now I'm just abusing this amenity.
Yeah.
And I was trying to avoid doing that. And then to your point as well. With trying to be part of a culture, I think it's like I am unable to speak Korean. It is not for lack of trying. I learned like 5 words. I learned how to read it on the flight. Like learning how to read the alphabet was easy. Like I learned how to read it on the flight, but actually learning words and how to pronounce them was where I started having my biggest issues. Just because like I'm Southern and my accent is thick. It's very, very thick. So like I never really got good at speaking Korean, but there are other little tiny things that I knew that were part of the culture that I tried to make sure that I was respectful in the culture. Mm-hmm. So one of the things that I was talking about is when you hand like money to someone, for example, if they're older than you, 2 hands, always 2 hands out like this, like here's my money. If they're similar in age to you, but you can't tell, it's still 2 hands, but like you touch this part of your wrist while you hand stuff. And then the further up you go, like if I'm handing something to you like this, that means like we're equals, right? Like I'm looking at, and if you're younger than me, then, high on the hand right here. So I learned that. And I would make sure to do that just not to be rude. I also learned, like if you were a teacher and you told your student to come here, this is rude. This is what you do to a dog. So I learned to do this, like come here. And it's just little things like that. I think you can put forth the effort to kind of like understand the culture enough to like, well, I'm not going to be rude within the culture just because it's not mine.
Yeah.
And make a few adjustments. Like I didn't like saying come here like this. It's not my favorite way to say come here. Just it feels unnatural to me. And it's just like, hey, come here. But by the time I left Korea, I was like, hey, come here. That's what I was doing. It's like, yeah, come here. Because I didn't want to make anyone feel rude. And the same thing for like, it took me 2 years of being back in the States to stop doing this.
Oh, really?
Money to people. I was back in the States and I was at like this I was at this like this restaurant and I handed my money to someone like this and the lady at the restaurant was like, have you been in Korea? And I was like, yeah.
Funny.
And she was like, yeah, because of how you handed the money. I was like, oh, okay.
That's funny.
Yeah.
That's good. I mean, yeah, I think like that's part of the stuff that Shay and I have talked about a lot is, being active participants, appreciation versus appropriation, and, like, I think the biggest concern that both of us have, but it's a slightly different for the way that I'm moving in it versus the way Shay moves in it, is paying brown people enough. Like, you don't want to offend them by overpaying if that's not part of the culture. You don't want to offset, I guess, the economy a little bit in the ways if you kind of do stuff like that. That's something that Shay's family experiences because they had her extended family owns property in Fiji, versus just like, if it's $10 a day is all they're making, my equivalent of $10 a day, and I can afford $20 a day, could I do that without offending? Could I do that without messing up the culture? Or is that a different kind of the colonizer mentality of just like, oh, you poor little people?
Well, I mean, capitalism is terrible, right? So let's just go ahead and knock that out.
And we have said before that there's no such thing as, healthy consumption or under capitalism.
Yeah.
But
I think what you end up doing is, quite frankly, like, I think in this case, especially for you, I think you can be concerned about the culture, but also understand that the culture is kind of bathed, if you will, in capitalism.
Sure.
And the way, especially when we look at like how, and I'm gonna dance around this, by the way. So if it sounds like I am, that means I'm doing my job. I think if we think about how class is addressed in each culture, I think we could make the argument that, especially when that culture is a capitalist culture, that those class distinctions are more about oppression than about actual distinctions or actual classes.
Yeah.
And so in that case, I would be I'd be reticent, if not adamantly opposed to supporting those class structures. And I get that, and as I'm saying this, I get that my judgment of those class structures is not mine to make. I can't be like, your culture's messed up. I'm not here to do that.
Right. Yeah.
But I am also not going to support something that I see as oppressive.
Yeah.
And if it offends you that I pay you more money, I'll pay you how much you're happy with. But I'm going to try to pay you more money.
I'm going to pay you more money, right?
I'm going to try to pay you more money. And fortunately, the beauty of capitalism is that in most places, if you're like, yo, let me give you more than I'm supposed to, no one's going to be like, no. Most people are like, okay, yes, I will take more. So, I mean, like, I would be surprised if someone was like, I'm offended that you wanted to pay me more money. But I will also say that in other countries, mileage may vary. Sometimes the trappings of capitalism here in America are far stronger than they are in other countries. Yeah. So, like, for example, just waiting tables here in America, terrible. It's the worst.
Terrible.
$2 an hour, and then if you don't get tipped, you can't survive.
And there's no tipping in Korea because they just pay everyone.
They pay everybody a wage.
They just pay everyone wages. So it's like, you can afford to like work here. You can afford as a waiter to like make a living wage at a restaurant. And it's not like, yo, we paid you $2 now everybody else has got to make it up. And I think that was weird for me because, like, to your point, every time I leave a restaurant not tipping, I'm like, this feels weird.
It does.
Yeah.
It felt better knowing that, like, I'm not leaving people like in an oppressive state. It's just they make enough money.
They make enough money.
Yeah. And I think that part of it is kind of why I would say that, like, the way capitalism expresses itself here in America is a little bit more extreme, and there's a lot more, I think there's more like kind of landmines, like capitalist landmines that you can run into.
Right. Yeah. That's fair.
Like, usually, from the, the Flower Ranger perspective, is
sorry, that took me a minute to spell flower correctly in my head. That's I haven't heard that one yet.
Is that when I, notice from my traveling and then all my research is that when my people tend to go somewhere, money means I've paid for it. I am entitled to something, which is, please leave that someplace else. Ikes on bikes. The other thing is that what we tend to do is we tend to create, wherever we go, we colonize, literally. Like, we go and we make a little America in Mexico, or we make a little America in Korea, and we want them to cater to us. And then because the American dollar for the longest time has had so much weight, we do get our way and we don't learn our fucking lesson to do better.
So there was an experience I had talking to a white lady who was also teaching, and she So, and I feel like this is something we have talked about before, Charmaine. When you're Black in another country, like the Black experience here is one where like it's noticeable when things are like because you're Black, right? So like if I'm like at a restaurant and everyone gets like helped but me, I'm like, was everyone else white? Is that what we're doing? And then they're like, oh, we get you last, and it's like, okay. Or like little things like when you walk by people in the street, there's a reaction that you're like, okay, is this just it's just my skin tone? There was a white lady who in Korea essentially experienced that and had a whole conversation with me. She was like, is this what it's like to be Black? And it took everything in me not to just be like, yes. It took everything in me, but she was like, I noticed when I go to stores, they'll help all the Korean people first, and then they'll help me. I noticed that like if I'm walking down the street, like men will spit in front of me and then walk around me, and I was just like,
you don't say.
Do tell.
Tell me more.
Yeah.
And I think what may be interesting for a lot of, especially if you're there by yourself, I think once you take like a group with you, you're a little bit more insulated from this. But I think if you're in a country by yourself, I think especially if you're white, you may be exposed to someone not treating you as like first class, like first class citizen. And I think that exposure, at least in the case of this one specific white lady, like really changed how she felt about like Black people. She literally was like, I'm so sorry, I didn't know it was like that. And I was like,
I mean, great, but
Great,
also
but
you shouldn't have to experience it.
Yeah,
I know. Why can't you just believe me when I tell you about my experience? Like, it's great that you. What do you want me to congratulate you? Yay, you've experienced racism.
Yeah.
You want to point? I'm so sorry, and then cringy. Still making it. I'm so sorry. You're still making it about.
Yeah.
You. Yeah.
Sorry, triggered.
No, you're fine. I will say though, it was an opportunity, I think, for her to kind of come to a realization that like
there's positives.
Yes. She had the aha moment.
Yeah, I mean it's not the way the aha moment I thought would go, but I mean it did happen, and I think if you are not a minority, like for me personally, being in another country, like I never noticed second class treatment. Because like I get that shit all the time. It's just like so they're treating me like Americans do. Dope. And honestly, I feel like I got better treatment in Korea because I'm 6'6" and have a tiny face. I've been told so many times. People like I kid you not. I was at a restaurant. I'm just eating Korean barbecue with a bunch of friends, having a great time.
Oh yeah.
Across the restaurant, this waiter sees me. He's like, "Oh!" Runs over. He's like, "Small face," and does this to me. It's like, small face, very beautiful, and then just walks off. And I was like, what is happening? Like,
someone randomly touching me. I don't think
it was just for my face. They were like,
I know,
like this.
Did they do that to their face or to your face?
To my face. He did
they
this.
Touched your face. Okay.
He was like, small face, and I was just
First of all, he had to do this. Right.
I was seated. So he came over and got me. But he was
imagine
small
if
face.
Jay is seated and I'm standing, we're at eye level.
Okay. All right.
As the Asian.
Okay.
And honestly, it didn't bother me that much because like I get, because I also had someone try to like rub the color off my skin while I was there too. It's like, whatever, I get it. You haven't seen a Black person. It's fine. You haven't seen a Black person. I'm not gonna be like, oh, how dare you? Like it's cool.
It is slightly different when you know.
Right.
Like if that happens here versus when that happens there.
If you're white, you've seen a Black person. You doing that to me here is different. If you're Korean, and I think a lot of this is because for a lot of Koreans, especially in rural areas, they never see anyone who's not Korean.
Right. Okay.
So they've never seen anyone who's not Korean. I had I was at a sub, and I'm gonna connect all these stories together. But I was at a subway station.
You're doing fine.
And I'm like waiting for the train to show up, and I'm like, when I sit in places, no one would sit next to me, which I kind of liked, but also I kind of was like, all right, so we're just not going to sit next to me? Cool.
Yeah.
It's like, I kind of was like, yeah, cool. I get all this space. There's this older Korean couple that shows up. And so I'm seated on this bench. Everyone's on the other end. And there's like only one seat next to me because no one's going to sit next to me. And I see them and I'm like, well, I'm not going to make this older Korean couple stand for the train. So I get up and I give them my seat. And I just kind of like gesture to the seat and they sit down. And so the older man like gestures to me. And I think he's going to try to say thank you. So I lean down and then he grabs my hand and hands it to his wife. And then they both rub my skin and then they feel my hair. and they're like, and then they say thank you, and it's like, all right, cool. So you just wanted to feel what was going on, cool. That and like it was something that like I said, I don't even really truly get upset about it. It was just like I think it's just you haven't seen a black person,
Yeah.
and you just want to satisfy the curiosity. I don't know how to tell you I'm not a museum exhibit in Korean,
Yeah.
but
I'm
it's
not
like
a petting zoo.
yeah,
Well,
it's like
there's
but
also something very specific to like, and I'll say East Asians because I'm a member of that diaspora here, I guess, is that like, we're talking about homogeneity. We're talking about like
95-96%.
most
Right.
of the thing. And it's not unreasonable to think that as if you don't live in a city, even if you live in like a suburb of a city, that it's still possible that on a regular basis you don't see someone that doesn't look like you. So anything that's different is exoticized there, which feels weird to be an American and think about you being the thing that is exoticized. But tall, because we're not tall,
Yeah.
tall is a thing. Oh, I do have a question I'm going to get to, but don't let me forget to ask you the question I want to ask.
Okay.
Tall is a thing, hair, black skin, hair, stuff like that or whatever. And I've told Shay this, and I've talked about it on my show too. I've never had the experience here, well, until this weekend, because it did happen to me when I was in Arizona. I've never had white people come up and get their hands all the way into my hair, even though I know they've had curiosity. I've had them reach, but I'm usually able to block the grab. I've only had Asian people that are transracially adopted by white people who have managed to get their hands in my head before I've had a chance to block. And that's mostly because I'm looking at an Asian face and I'm confused by the hand that's coming towards me. And it's happening so quickly that I don't pop, pop, pop.
Mm-hmm.
Except for this weekend, it happened when I was at my cousin's house. A white woman put her hand in my hair just to compare it to my cousin's hair, which means she definitely has put her hand in my cousin's head before.
Like, I don't understand. And this is just me personally. Like, if I don't give you money, you shouldn't touch my head. Like,
I'm
I feel
saying,
like if you're not a hairstylist, you're not
if
a
you're
barber.
not a hairstylist, or we ain't fucking.
Yeah,
that's right.
You shouldn't. I guess. Yeah. Also that.
Yes,
even if you are, don't touch my hair.
Sure. I mean, sure. It's luxurious.
If we ain't fucking, or you ain't getting paid to touch my head. No, don't do it. So, like, I don't have that curiosity also to reach in and grab someone's hair or anything like that. But with Asians, I find, and I'm mostly dealing with Asian Americans or people who are Asian and come to America, when they want to know what's different, like the fascination with difference because they don't experience difference. So it is exoticizing. It is a little bit fetishizing, but the way it moves is different.
Yeah.
Than the way we do it here. So it's not necessarily it's negative objectification, but
it's one of those things where I think that, and the fact that I don't know enough Korean to explain to you why this is not okay. So it's like I can't, like I don't know enough Korean to be like, hey, maybe don't touch people. Like I don't know enough Korean to say that,
especially without permission.
Right.
Oh, God.
And I mean, to be fair, they they might have asked because they were like, hey, come here.
Well, who knows? Yeah,
and then I leaned over
and
I don't know if they asked. They might be like, yo, can we touch your skin? And I was like, okay, because I don't know. I don't speak Korean, so like it was one of those things where like honestly, it was a grain of salt moment for me where I was just like, I could be upset about this, but I don't, like, what am I gonna do? Like I'm angry, like so now I'm just this angry dude. They don't know why I'm upset.
Right.
And then like the train showed up and I was like, cool, let's just get on the subway. Let me just go to where I'm going. So I mean, but I think it's just something that to your point, it's a little bit of an exoticization, but it's not. I think it's more like exotic, but not a fetish, right? I think for white people, it feels more like a fetish.
Yeah.
So it's like,
that makes,
I've never
fair.
seen this before versus, oh, I like this shit. I think that's the difference for me.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I think that's the difference. Like, I've never seen this before. It doesn't bother me. If you're like,
Yeah.
I've never seen a black person, and I may never again. Because to be fair, you may never see another black person again in Korea. Like, this might be your one shot. Like, I get it. So like, for that, it's like, all right, I get it. This is your only time to be like, yo, I felt a fro. Right. All right, fine. But
which leads me to the question that I want to ask you about this.
Oh, let's hear it.
Were you ever handed a baby and had your picture taken with the Korean baby?
Never a baby. A lot of children. And a lot
you
of
were
my
handed children, though.
Yeah, a lot of children and a lot of my picture getting taken in general.
Yes.
Sometimes like sneakily and sometimes not. Like people love to watch me, like to take pictures of me like eating udon. So like,
yeah, because you're like, you're just like us, but not.
Yeah, it's like, look at him, he's eating udon. Look at him, and it was just, I remember I was at a kimbap restaurant and I ordered some udon. I'm just eating it and I'm like using the metal chopsticks because that's what Koreans use. Which, by the way, oh my god, like they both make sense and are also like horrible to use. It's so difficult. It's so difficult to use. It took like time to get used to those.
Because they get warm.
No, they're slippery.
No, they're slippery.
They're real slippery. They're metal. So it's like the same metal as your silverware, but you're not poking anything. You're just trying to grab
You're trying
stuff.
to hold udon noodles with it and it just slips right out of the thing.
I mean, as an Asian, even though we don't typically use the metal in Japanese, none of these things that you're saying is making sense.
Sir, because I think one of the things you might have been doing wrong is doing this.
Coarse ass skin that holds on to.
It's okay. Use a set of metal chopsticks. That's all I'm gonna say. Use a set, and you use. Did they have like the little grooves on the end, or were they just smooth?
Yeah,
smooth.
Okay, well I can't. So I think maybe that's a better way to put it. I can't. It is a struggle for me. I mean, I can't. I feel like I learned like about a year in, I kind of figured it out. But for a year, it was like, yo, I'm gonna starve. It's like
to be fair, I had a set of Star Wars hashi before that were some kind of plastic, and those didn't hold food well. But I could grip it just fine. So but it didn't like hold noodles well, I guess is.
It didn't hold anything. Eventually I got, and I think also what I found out is with wooden chopsticks, I tend to I tend to like grip really hard so that like the wood is like bending and it's like everything I grab is like just
pinching and stuff like that.
I'm pinching it. I think I learned to just like not pinch but to just kind of manipulate. So I got way better with it. But at the time, not great at it. And there's this group of like teenagers who were walking by that just took a picture of me, like, and tried to do it like undercover. And I was like, huh, that's cute. And then this older couple came by, not even undercover. They were just like, and they just walked off. And I was like, why is everyone so into watching me eat udon? It makes you feel like a celebrity sometimes.
First of all, udon. I think I can watch anybody watch you.
It's really good. And
now tell me how it tastes. Go slower. It was, and I will say that too. Like that was also kind of like the highlight of living in Korea. It was just like Korean food. Like I liked it before, but then I was like, oh my god, it's like the source. It's
getting
so
it from
fresh, man. Come on.
Yeah.
Which also, is why like I'll go to a Japanese restaurant in the US and it's like it's fine or it's even delicious, but compare it to my grandmother's food.
Exactly.
No. You know.
There was this old lady who had like a little tiny shop right around the street from my apartment that I don't like sundae in general. Sundae, by the way, is Korean blood sausage. I don't particularly care for it. But this older Korean lady in her little shop made the best sundae, and I would be the only time and I actually told her like you're the only sundae I can eat. Like I don't like anyone else's sundae, but I would go and get sundae from her like once a week because it was just the best. I don't know what she did to it. I don't know, but she just had the touch.
I feel like any country's cuisine needs to be based off of how you can get it on the street. Like because in the States, the best thing we have to offer is pretzels with mustard in New York. Which like why are you putting mustard on it?
Hot dog or knish
or hot dogs or knish and stuff like that, right? No. And this is not a great example of like if this is our food, that sucks. Whereas like you could get street food from Mexicans, you could get street food from Asians, you could get street food from South America. Like there's street food that tells you everything you need to know about whether or not the people love themselves.
I mean,
yeah.
I think too, like especially like in other places, their street food is better because they actually are meant for like walking.
Yes.
So, like in Korea, it's a city meant for walking, so there's all these little shops, and so you're just running by, grabbing like a little fish cake or grabbing like some sundae or like just getting a quick meal and then continue walking. Like here, all of our street food is just drive-throughs basically because we're so geared around the car. So I don't think we really have proper street food because not many of our cities are meant for walking.
Right. Yeah. I just had a picture of this like really dope ass looking hot dog situation that I got on the street, but it's completely cold on the inside. And like
frozen cold?
Yeah, it was in Austin. It made me upset.
One of the best foods or meals I ever had in New York. And I think I don't know. It was a pierogi street vendor. Fire.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm not leaving. Give me another one. Like they're like, we're gonna be late to a show. I'm not done. I need another one. It was really good. And I didn't even know I liked pierogies that much.
What is a pierogi?
It's like a stuffed sandwich.
Stuff
Yeah,
with what?
like meat and vegetables, but
Okay.
like it's like a potato based like dumpling, like a.
Like is
Are there
it
potatoes
Eastern
in it?
European?
Is it potato based? Pierogies? I guess.
Well,
I don't. I'm honestly asking. I'm not sure.
It can be a noodle, and I have seen it in like potato based.
Okay.
Okay.
But like, yeah, it was.
I've
like
heard this word, but I've never.
like Ukrainian or like.
It sounded Eastern European. Yeah, I don't know.
was
So
really
is it
good.
maybe pickled? I'm not a fan of pickled foods too much.
Sometimes they'll put that. I don't know, but it was like it's warm and hot and like it's like a soup. It's like a soup dumpling, but with like
in
less
bread?
No, but in a no. Like it's in a noodle, but it's like less. Okay, the soup dumpling has a lot more soup. This has a lot more like it's like a stew in a dumpling. Am I saying this right?
I like this description. You're spot on. Yeah, it's I think of it, I just call them hot sandwiches, but I guess they're technically not. Technically not a hot sandwich. I mean, but yeah, the description that Shay gave is pretty spot on.
Okay, I'll have to Google. I'd have to Google. So taking away, okay, you did 3 years. You said you didn't plan on doing 3 years initially, but every time you just kind of signed up, read up, and things like that. What was life?
Yeah,
like what was your life like?
It was actually really nice. I lived on the same block as my school, so like I could walk to work in like 2 minutes. Like living in Korea, especially where I was, there were some American amenities. There was like a Costco in the city, so like you could go there and get specific American items. There was like I think the life itself was pretty decent. I will say, of everything that I did while there, I 100% ended up loving teaching. I ended up like having like these overarching long relationships with students who would only take my class, and so we became like, you know, over like the course of 3 years, like I just knew these students. And something that is unique about like the way I guess I ended up like when I left is like I cried when I left. Like it's to this day it still feels more like home to me than any place else I've lived.
Have you felt safer there generally?
I feel safe everywhere. I'm like 6'6".
I mean, fair.
It's like who's really trying to like even like I'm 6'6". I grew up in like bad neighborhoods, so like
Sure.
I feel pretty safe everywhere. I'm like, who's really gonna fuck with me? But to your point, I think it was one of the first places I think I lived where I was like, okay, even people who did not speak English, if you asked for help and were like, hey, and try, they were there for you.
They loved the attempt.
Yeah, like there was a couple who owned a convenience store that was in the bottom floor of my building, and I would go there and grab like shrimp chips and beer. And when I got there, they would try to teach me a Korean word every time. So they'd be like, "Oh, so this is how you say shrimp chip, or this is how you say beer," and I would like, and so like they would, and every time I came in, I'd say hello, and then I'd ask how they're doing. And because I learned how to say that stuff because they would just take time to talk to me. And I think it was just little things like that where you don't have to spend that additional time, you know, trying to connect with someone who doesn't speak your language. But the fact that you're willing to do it and that you want to help was always nice to me.
Yeah.
How was like balance, like work balance? Like, you know, it's not Korea's not the cheapest place to live. So how did you find it?
Work-life balance was nice. I would go into work at 3 and I'd leave at 10. You only worked 4 days a week. Your fifth day was a planning day, so you were at work, but you don't have a class. You're just sitting and planning.
Okay.
Which is again respect for teaching. It's like, look, we're gonna have you teach 4 days a week, and then your fifth day, you're just prepping, which is amazing.
That's good.
Yeah.
And I think as far as just like the balance itself, I think it was pretty solid. When I became a supervisor, I think I got a few more roles in addition. So like I had to watch CCTV of like teachers as they taught, which by the way, if you teach in Korea, you will be on not closed caption, but on closed circuit television.
Okay.
And they just have cameras in all their classrooms, which by the way, great thing for you. So if a kid does something, there's this girl who stole some candy. So I brought candy in for this game for a bunch of kids. And this is why I stopped bringing candy to my classes, by the way. So I brought candy in for this game. It's like, all right, so we're going to play a game, and the prizes are candy. So if you get something right, you get a piece of candy. So we go through all this. There's one girl, she doesn't get anything right. She doesn't get any candy. And being the person I am, I'm like, well, you got to get stuff right to get candy. So then we take a break. And someone had candy on their desk. They go to the bathroom. When they came back from break, their candy was gone. And they're like, my candy's gone. So they're looking for it. So I have access to the closed circuit television. So I just pull it up and I just start watching. And I see this little girl go over, like look around, sneak someone's candy, and then like hide it in her bag. And so like after I see her do it, like I grab her and I take her outside and we have a whole conversation. She starts crying and she apologizes. But in that instance, the entire class was like in uproar about missing candy, and without the CCTV, we would never, like, we found it pretty quickly. And then because like I'm like showing her, she's like, I didn't take it. I'm like, all right, come look at this, and I'm showing her take it, and she's like, okay, I took it. And I think in that case, it's useful for you both as a teacher, but also like if a student accuses you of something, it's on TV, so it's like, if I did it, you should be able to see it. And I think that's also super useful for you. But yeah, I would say that the balance was pretty solid. I got a chance to like visit and like go a lot of different places.
Yeah.
And then
good.
You can like I feel like you can get to Japan by boat. You can get to Cambodia pretty quickly. There's a lot of places that you can get to that are like Korea kind of ends up being like a base camp for those places.
Sure, yeah.
Which is super nice. And then I would recommend if you are in Korea to check out Jeju Island. It's it's like their national park is what I would how I would call it. It's super nice. It's like a little volcanic island. It's like really cute.
That's awesome. I really appreciate you coming back, especially since you and I have already kind of done this before. And that you're sharing all of this with us I really appreciate it. Plus, it's just nice to hang out with you again because it's been a minute. Before we wrap up,
okay,
give me like your top 3 reasons why you think people should try, or your bottom 3 reasons why they shouldn't try to live in another country.
I think everyone should at least spend a year or more in another country. I think it gives you a perspective of how other countries run. So, for instance, like I wear glasses, and I got my glasses in Korea for $40, and they were done in 10 minutes. And it was like, what?
It's helpful.
Yeah, it's like
I waited
what?
3 weeks for these things.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I think what that experience has kind of taught me is that like a lot of times, especially if you live in one country by itself, you think, oh, this is the dopest country in the world. And because you've never experienced anything else, you aren't aware that there are better ways that things can be done. And you also may not be aware of that, not even better. There are just other ways that people do things. So there are other ways that people live. But the thing that I think I would also say that has always been unique to me is that like everywhere I've lived, it was different, but it always kind of felt the same. There's always dirt under your feet. People all have the same problems. We all have to eat. We all have to like have food. We all need water.
Yeah.
We all have to breathe. So like everywhere you go, I think you start to realize that like there are things that are different, but at the end of the day, there are also so many things that connect us. And even if you don't speak the same language, we all have the same needs. We all have the same desires. We all have like the same, in many cases, like similar goals in life and what we want and how we want to live our lives. And I think that is the perspective that I would recommend that people need to get, just to kind of understand that other countries are different, and the differences are kind of what makes them other countries, but the things that are the same are kind of what makes us all human. And then I would say also, do it for the experience of, if you're a minority, do it for the experience of living someplace where your race is not the first thing that comes up. It's not the first thing. I mean, obviously, it's there, But for many Koreans, my race wasn't the first thing they noticed. For a lot of Koreans, the first thing they really noticed was like I have a small face and I'm tall.
And you're tall.
Small face and tall. And I think that was a unique
Ticket.
experience for me. Yeah, if you have a small face, totally go to Korea.
I gotta go measure now.
If you can do this to your face,
Yeah.
like oh,
And
go.
I'm sitting here with this, like, it's not quite moon face, Japanese moon face.
But I would say, in all honesty, and all joking aside, I'd say it's a really good opportunity, I think, to like expand your perspectives on the world, to expand like how you think, and I think also the last thing I'll say is it really kind of shows the impact America has had on the world. So I kind of got to see from another country when stuff happened, how that country reacted to what America did.
Oh, interesting.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah.
So
yeah,
you get to see how other countries react to it, and not just like the American story of it. It's we saw America do.
We
this.
saw.
And this is an ally, of course, so they're not going to be like, "Yo, America, let's hold you to the fire." But there's stuff where
At the same time.
there's a
same
real
time.
different take.
Yeah.
They would call us out on our shit very quickly.
It's a real different take. Yeah,
Yeah.
and I don't think you get that. Like, you don't get that experience or that perspective of like people being like, "Yo, I don't fucking like America, and here's why." And as they list points, you're like, "Yo, these are all valid." Like, you don't have that. You don't get that. And it's not until you experience that I think like, and you go overseas and experience that, because again, they are not seeing America from the source of its origin or source of its power. They're seeing it from the outside.
Right.
I guess the other thing too, if I'm going to throw one last thing in, is it's just fun. Like it's a fun thing to do. Like I for all the stress and all the stuff that we talked about, I never had a moment where I was like, oh man, this is not going to work. And it's funny because when I moved to Seattle, I almost left Seattle. I was like, I can't do this.
I actually heard you talk about this before.
Yeah,
Where you're just
I
like,
can't do this. I was like, I'm going to leave Seattle. But I never had that moment in Korea. It was always like, yeah, this is going to work. And I never felt as if, like like I said, I chose to leave, but I never felt as if I had to go. It was always kind of like, yeah, this is fine. This is working. And I always had fun.
Short of how much you would miss your mom and extended family and things like that, would you go back?
I mean, like, to live?
Yeah. I know life is different for you now. You have a wife and things like that too, but
I would go back. I mean, it would be another temporary run, but if you're like, yo, you can do another 3 years, I can do another 3.
Me too.
Just because I feel like it was something I enjoyed. I also still really love teaching, even though I don't do it now. And then it was a lot of fun for me, and more to the point, I think I grew as a person, like, exponentially. There were things that I came to an understanding of in Korea that I didn't have in America, and some of it was just because I was in a country by myself, and it was just things that I had to figure out. Living in a country by myself that Dubom couldn't do for me. And I think there's also just this chance, I think, like I said, to see your country from someone else's eyes.
Yeah.
I, as somebody who traveled as a child, and to get the perspective of an American, a white American, and how we were treated elsewhere, it was a opportunity for me to see a perspective that I would not have been able to see had I just traveled around the States, because I went to countries where where arranged marriages are still happening, and education only went up to the 8th grade for women, and so it gave me more of an appreciation, and then also, like, it triggered the step of, because there's a part of you that goes, oh, it's just better in America because, I was raised in that.
Yeah.
But then to see it going, no, it wasn't. And to see that I'm in a place where there's history of my people doing harm.
Yeah.
And the after effects that doesn't just go away because they leave.
Yeah.
And even as a young person who didn't really understand everything, I still was seeing it and understanding something, which helped me unpack some stuff later on. But that was a different perspective of being a privileged little kid being catered around, but also you're not being seen. You're just, like, watching everything. So, and then making friends. So,
Thank you again for joining us on the show. Why don't you tell everybody one more time how to find you? And what didn't get said this time that did get said last time was your comedy. So if you got anything coming up.
Yeah, so I am, if you go to jjonescomedy.com, that's where all of my shows are. If you're in the Seattle area, I definitely have shows in Seattle. If you're outside of the Seattle area, maybe. I'm still working on some of those.
Presently within driving distance of Seattle.
Yeah, that's what we're doing right now. So Portland, I'm probably going to be... I'm working on a show right now. That's we'll just say that. I actually run a show here in Seattle called The Blackout. It's the only all-black comedy showcase in Seattle.
Hey.
Yeah, we've been going pretty strong. We started last April, and we've sold out every show so far, which has been blessing. And then Frown Town, like I said, we're on hiatus. It is my podcast. I think if you just search Frown Town, I don't think there's a lot of other Frown Town stuff.
It'll just pop up. Yeah, it'll be the first thing that pops up.
But we're on a hiatus right now. Like I said, we're just trying to figure out how we
Life
feel about the world.
logistics.
Yeah, how we feel about the world.
I guess how you feel about the world, true.
I was on board for changing stuff 2 years ago when we started it, and now I'm kind of like, I don't think we're going to change anything.
Seriously, the
it's a much
pandemic
darker show.
has taught me that literally almost everybody I knew would be willing to hide the zombie bite if they got zombied, if they got bit.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I'm
It's
I'm not here to help anymore.
yeah. You're in the same place I'm at, where I'm like, y'all are horrible. I don't know if I want to help y'all.
Yeah, like I don't like. There's like a smaller number of people that I want to be in community with now than ever before. So.
Absolutely. You can't even do bare minimum stuff, and you're thinking that we're gonna change the world when we actually need bodies in the street standing up for something.
No, thank you.
No, thank you. You can't even wear a mask or not buy a really bad video game.
Oh yeah, because of the
people are still
that's
doing
happening
that.
right now. That's happening right now.
All
right. Did we do the @symbols? Your socials? You want to do the socials?
Adjective_J on Instagram and on Twitter. Also Adjective J on Black Twitter.
Okay,
that's right. It exists.
And
that's pretty much the best place to find me. Instagram and Twitter are the best places to find me.
Cool beans. Thank you again. And
thank you for having me, by the way. This was fun.
It was fun.
I also enjoyed talking to you. Shay, it was nice to meet you. Hopefully I get to talk to you again at some point.
Yes, please.
I would
thank you.
definitely think it would be interesting to do a Frown Town because I still haven't met your co-host yet. And
we should do
I feel like there's vibes. In this group. That could work.
I think it would be a lot of fun, and also I feel like V would really appreciate us doing another episode. He has been very patient while I'm like, I'm gonna figure this whole thing out, and he's like, hey, take your time, man. And I'm like, all right. And then 2 months later he's like, so taking that time.
Where we at in the press record?
I'm still here.
Yeah.
He's been great, and honestly, I don't know if he listens to this, but if he does, I appreciate the supportiveness that he's had. He's been pretty fantastic.
Nice,
baby. We love you.
Yeah, we do.
We are within, like I said, about 40 days at the time of recording until we go to Merida. Shay is first flying from Arizona to Houston to be assigned a cat because I have 4 cats and we got 4 people that are gonna go. Each one's going to have a cat, and then we're going to be in Merida. So I actually don't know what our schedule is for the next couple of weeks, but we'll definitely start getting more living abroad, I guess, content coming up to you soon. Follow us on all the socials at QueerFarPod, on the TikToks, the Instagrams, kind of Twitter, but not Twitter, Facebook, whatever. And we're waxed.
We're vaxxed.
And we're back.
Correct. Let's go.
So let's go.
Queer and Far is a Main Hustle Media podcast, produced and edited by Charmaine Fury. Co-hosted by Charmaine Fury, aka The Blazing Blurred, and Shay Nanigans. Music is Big Band Savage Jazz by Pine Groove. If you like what you've heard on Queer and Far, please subscribe, rate, and review on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Main Hustle Media. Turn your side hustle into your main hustle.